Washington, President Trump's signature on the Republican tax bill marks his most important legislative achievement to date. It also represents the breaking of a signature promise that helped propel his populist presidential campaign. This week, as senior White House officials touted passage of the tax overhaul in Congress, they also expressed one regret: failing to close the so-called carried interest loophole that benefits wealthy hedge fund managers and private equity executives. Despite Mr. Trump's vows to eliminate a tax rule that allows some rich business leaders to pay lower tax rates than their secretaries, the president in this case was no match for the powerful lobbyists protecting the status quo. "I don't know what happened," said Larry Kudlow, the conservative economist who crafted Mr. Trump's campaign tax plan. "I don't know how that thing survived," he said, adding, "I am sure the lobbying was intense." Carried interest is the percentage of an investment's gains that a private equity partner or hedge fund manager takes as compensation. At most private equity firms and hedge funds, the share of profits paid to managers is about 20%. Under existing law, that money is taxed at a capital gains rate of 20%, which is about half of the top individual income rate, which is currently 39.6% and will fall to 37% under the final tax bill. Critics of the existing practice, which include both Democrats and Republicans and the billionaire Warren Buffett, argue that this money is effectively income and should be taxed as such at the ordinary individual income tax rate. Mr. Trump used to be one of those critics. 2 months after kicking off his campaign, Mr. Trump railed against hedge fund managers in an August 2015 interview for being guys that shift paper around, who were getting away with murder by not paying their fair share of taxes. "They make a fortune, they pay no tax," he said. "They have to pay taxes?" A year later, in a speech at the Detroit Economic Club, Mr. Trump was more explicit about what he planned to do about it if elected. "We will eliminate the carried interest deduction, well-known deduction, and other special interest loopholes that have been so good for Wall Street investors and for people like me but unfair to American workers," Mr. Trump said, incorrectly referring to the special treatment of carried interest as a tax deduction. "So what happened?" Gary C. Cohn, the director of the White House's National Economic Council, said on Wednesday that the administration tried more than 24 times to eliminate the carried interest loophole and that, as recently as this week, Mr. Trump asked why it was not gone. Mr. Cohn, a former top Goldman Sachs executive, said opposition from lobbyists and lawmakers on Capitol Hill was intense and that the best that could be done was to extend the holding period for investments that qualify for the tax break to 3 years from 1. "The president strongly believes, and he ran on this, that carried interest is a loophole," Mr. Cohn said at an event sponsored by Axios.